So I would be remiss if I didn't at least bring up Jesse Ventura. And this is not one of those things where all wrestlers are friends. Just like I've had people, oh, you're Jewish from Florida. Do you know so and so? So no, I'm not putting it out there like, oh, you're a wrestler. You must know about Jesse Ventura. But obviously, this is somebody who arguably has come closest to being in a position of being a candidate for president, somebody who has been in the executive branch, who was a governor, and someone who came out of the world in which you are in, and is also pretty progressive. So what are your thoughts about Jesse and what he's been able to do politically in bridging those two worlds?
Yeah, so I remember one of the final papers I wrote in high school was based on Jesse Ventura's book, and it was really enlightening for me to hear
Which book?
Oh gosh, it was the one where he just talked about being a Navy SEAL and then getting into politics. It was this had to have been 98 or 97 when it was put out, and I really vibed with like what he was doing and what he was into. And then for him to go on and become the governor of Minnesota. And I've heard interviews of him, and he felt like he couldn't accomplish anything. He was happy that he got a rail system between Minneapolis and St. Paul, but in the end, the institutions are bigger than just one person. And I think that's why he lives in Mexico half the year, because he put in his effort to really try and make some progress. But at a certain point, you're stifled at all ends by a system that's designed to keep the kind of wealthy in power and not have change. But yeah, I mean, I'm a big supporter of, Governor Ventura. When I was in WWE, he came in to do a guest spot. This must have been in 2011 or something. And I told him, hey, listen, if you plan on running for anything, I would love to join you. I would love to, promote, to be a part of anything you want to do. And he kind of made it seem like that 2012 run wasn't going to happen. And he was just kind of pushing politics to the side for his other, he reaches out through his own, he's done a number of videos, stuff on different networks.
Oh, I watch his show. Look, The World According to Jesse.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, he has a great philosophy. I mean, he sort of has a very independent spirit where people should be able to take care of themselves, but also, with the government in place to empower them, to help them. And just like simple things like I hate to compare the US to Japan all the time, but in Japan, if you want to go anywhere, there's a train. If you want to go from Osaka to Tokyo, no problem. I lived in a little town called Kobe. I could go up the block with the train, and yet, in 2008, we bailed out all these automakers who just make cars to sell us. And I mean, I'll go off track real quick, but I get infuriated because my students, my girlfriend, all these people, they need a car to drive to work. We're already paying tons of money for car insurance. Then they get a car. You put down a couple $1,000s, but then they're charging you 22% interest. To me, that's criminal. Selling people cars that are going to be selling people a car that depreciates in value at 22% interest, knowing full well they're going to be underwater when they go to sell it. Then you say, hey, don't worry, we'll give you a $40,000 loan for your new $10,000 car, and then you'll be underwater with that one too. I mean, there's so many places where people are getting taken advantage of legally. It's disgusting when we have, we use this legal or illegal thing, and I just feel like that's not an equation to morality. And I feel like there's so many places where we need to stand up and fight for people who are just born into a system that's there to take advantage of them. That's a predatory system. We smash our youth, our kids with advertisements from the minute they're born. They don't go outside and see nature. They go outside and see billboards. I mean, we are
predatory capitalism. Everything. It's predatory capitalism at its finest.
Yeah. Well refined predatory capitalism. I mean, I find myself falling for it all the time as well. But like I said, it's these critical thinking skills that I was able to learn in my school that the teachers focused on, not just taking what people said, but doing the research. Because when the internet first came out, people posted all sorts of crazy things, and you sort of had to sift through to see where the source was, who was the writer, who was posting it on what website. And now I feel like people read a headline and that's the God's gospel to them instead of really digging in.
Wikipedia knows all.
Thinking. Yeah. Well, I mean, people use, Wikipedia at least is people are looking at the same thing. So you can show it to somebody and say, hey, what do you think about this article? As opposed to getting on Facebook where you only see things that support not just your side, but support things that are just more engaging, and that will make you that will make you click on it, regardless of the substance. And I mean, I think it's just a veil being pulled over us by social media companies, just so that you pay more attention to them. That way they can sell more advertisements, which is the reason why Donald Trump is a savior to the media world, because he is a media draw. He gets people put their eyes on him. They can't turn away. So he's good for he's good for every news organization.
They love him.
And especially at a time where people are moving off of TV. Well, guess who's still spending millions of dollars on TV ads? Politicians are, because they still are able to get people on TV. But this is the last lifeline. 4 years from now, the amount of money spent on television will dwindle in comparison to what is now. And so these media corporations, they need a strong power figure to draw back in fans or draw back in voters who are going to pay attention to their program, so that way they can sell pharmaceutical ads to the pharmaceutical company, banking ads to the banking company, credit card ads to the credit card companies. That's sort of, it's this gross self cycle of kind of of taking advantage of people. And I think that if we had the right leadership and the right people in power, that we could turn these things from things that eat people alive to things that kind of create life and produce communities and more holistic approaches to solving things.
One of the things that obviously we're very supportive of here is labor in general. And, Florida is a right to work state, and we have really sufficiently squashed our labor force here, more so exponentially than other places in the country. But has there ever been any sort of attempt in the wrestling world to form a union?
I think there have been, rumors and subtle talks of it. And I mean, like the big talk now with WWE is that their wrestlers are treated like independent contractors, but are not. And I mean, when I was at WWE, they control your schedule. They can control your costume. I mean, they told my friend right before we were going to go wrestle it was like a Monday night in London. And they told him, get a haircut. Like he had long hair. He had to cut his hair before, and he's an independent contractor. We're not allowed to work anywhere else, but we're independent contractors. And now they're taking away the wrestlers' Twitch accounts, any third party things they had to make money or revenue. So when I was with WWE, even though I would have to go to radio stations on a Monday before I was wrestling on Monday Night Raw at 6:30 a.m. I was doing a media circuit, local TV, local radio, going around. Hey, my name is Matt. Nice to meet you. Okay, hi, Evan. You're going on. You're tonight. You're doing radio interviews as your wrestling character, Evan Bourne, promoting a show. And it really, to me, it really did not seem like an independent contractor situation. So there was it's definitely a gray area.
How did they get away with that? That really is. I mean, if you are going to classify somebody as an independent contractor, then I don't understand how you can have that much control over every little thing that they do. That's something that you do with people that are on your payroll as staff.
Yeah. And I mean, when you get into the details, it's even worse, because then you think about all they would do. So if I had to wrestle in New York City on Friday, and then we had a show down in Baltimore, then Washington, D.C., and then one in Virginia, back-to-back days, they'd fly you to New York. Then I have to rent my own rental car at my expense, which are not cheap, especially when you rent it in New York. Then I wrestle in New York City. I'll drive down to Baltimore, buy my own hotel, go to the arena at the time they tell me, do exactly what they ask of me, then drive to the next town, all on my own expenses.
And you don't get reimbursed. Like you don't get reimbursed for travel expenses. You don't get to submit that and as part of like your expense report.
Absolutely not. That we got 0 expense reports. I mean, the year I did the best with most successful pay in wrestling, I also had $80,000 in road expenses. And that's not being a tax cheat. That's not adding. That's what it cost me to rent cars, stay in hotels, and eat while I'm traveling. I mean, it was. And you also have to show up to work dressed nice, so you go to the gym in the morning, you drive all night till 1 or 2 in the morning, check into a hotel, which is an arduous process at 2 in the morning.
Yes.
Sleep for a little bit, wake up, go to the gym, shower, change into nice dress clothes to go to the arena, change back into your gym clothes to get ready to hear what you're going to be told to do tonight in a script that changes 4 times between 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. showtime. And then they can always cut your match or add 5 minutes or take away 5 minutes. I mean, it's very interesting that we're still independent contractors. At the places I wrestle now, I really am independent. So I run my own business and I'm contracted out by different organizations across the country. So I don't really just work for one. But the way pro wrestling is set up is something where we probably should be in the Screen Actors Guild or something of that sort. And we're not. And, the people who set up who build our sets, they're in a union. Our cameramen, they're in a union. So sometimes like at some tapings they'll say, hey, we need a break for the cameramen. They need a break because of their union setup. And knowing full well that as wrestlers, we sit at that building for 12 hours. We leave when the work's done. If my match doesn't happen till 1 a.m., it doesn't happen till 1 a.m. I go out, I wrestle at 1 a.m., then I drive on to the next town and try and do it again. So, there's definitely some labor issues that could be changed around. But for me, I never feel bad for myself because I can handle it. But I get blown away when people say, oh, they should get a second job or a third job when people are working 40 hours a week for $7.25 an hour or $8.50 an hour. It's repulsive to me that people aren't getting $15 an hour. And I know we've got in this upcoming election, we're going to be able to vote for $15 an hour for Florida.
Amendment 2, everybody. Yes, on Amendment 2. Got to plug it.
Great. Amendment 2, hurrah. But I'm still like saying, this is a half measure that we're only adding in $1 a year for the next 4 years. It's a great start. We have to get there some way or another.
It's a drop in the bucket. It's a drop in the bucket because right now it should be, if our minimum wage had been going along with cost of living, right now in my location in Broward, we would be somewhere around $24, $27 an hour if that were keeping up with the cost of living. And so, when people are fighting about giving people a $15 minimum wage, I'm just floored. I'm like, you have no idea how much higher that really should even be.
I agree completely. And it's like the efficiency of workers has increased, yet the profits from that never went back to them because, again, we have an entire country's labor system built on economic insecurity. And the more insecure you can keep your workers, the harder you can grind, the harder you can make them work for less money to generate more profits for the really people who do profit, which is that top 1% or that top 0.01% that really does profit off of all of our labor. And I get frustrated when people tell me they don't think the person at McDonald's or wherever should be making $15 an hour, because it's insulting, because we live in a society where everybody has to play a role. That if you're a janitor, that's an honorable job. If you're a teacher, that's an honorable job. Whatever you do is an honorable job because it's in service to a greater good. And to say these people need to work 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet is really a selfish perspective, because everybody's work is of equal value. So we should start everybody off at a place where if you work a full-time schedule, 40 hours a week, you should be able to afford a place to live and food for your family. And that literally, it doesn't even cover cable. Okay. $15 an hour isn't enough to get you a good Wi-Fi.
No, it's not even including entertainment. That's not even, it's just a bare minimum. And I say that all the time, is that we need to come to some sort of consensus as to what is our minimum standard of living that we are all happy with, that we find acceptable. And, when people say they don't think that somebody at McDonald's should make $15 an hour, I want to turn that around and say, so are you saying that somebody working at McDonald's deserves to live on the street? Are you saying that that person doesn't deserve to have health care, that they don't deserve to have, food? And, when people are just they think of life as this pie. And if somebody else gets a bigger piece, then that means your piece is smaller. And I of course am of the thought that life is an endless batch of pot cookies and there's plenty for all. But and I try to explain that when you don't have workers that are getting paid with anything wherein they have any disposable income, you cannot have a thriving capitalist economy when people have no money. So when you have no consumers, You cannot have so eventually what you have is a predatory capitalism system that we're seeing sort of imploding on itself as there's no more consumers to be consuming the goods. And I think people need to understand that it's not so much, even if you don't have a problem with it morally, which, not everybody has the same morality and think that everybody's entitled to just have a standard of living. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, do it, whatever you got to do. But from an economic perspective, we can't have a thriving capitalism without consumers. And right now, we're not having consumers.
That's such a good point. I mean, so many people focus on the scarcity and not the fact that there really truly is a surplus. And as somebody who goes out, like when I wrestle on the weekends, I know people worked all week, Monday to Friday, grinding to be able to afford tickets to the show, to afford a popcorn and a soda and a hot dog and maybe a t-shirt when they come. And so I really respect when people show up to my event, I want to give them beyond their money's worth within the first 20 minutes. I want them to feel like they got their money's worth. And, if we were helping people out during this pandemic, I know I would have more students at my school. So my small business would be doing better. Every business would be doing better. All these people who I make candles or whatever home business you have, we would be able to support each other much more if we all were getting a decent amount of money and not living in really just true insecurity where it's like, if I buy this, I can't buy that. Or if I support this charity, I can't support that charity. It forces people into these places where they're really in a tense situation and not experiencing the surplus that so many people are. And I mean, we live in the US, so we have it even better than so many people across the world. What's bad for us would be incredible for so many other people. So it's just really important to get this perspective that, I just feel like the better the people around me do, the better I'm doing. And the more the people around me struggle and hurt, the more I'm going to struggle and hurt. We're not independent people. Nobody lives in this world alone. We're in a society. It absolutely is. We all drive on the roads that we share. We all, there's so much in it where we're in it together. When people try and say it's about me, or that the focus on an individual over other people just really puts you in a mind state where you do think people should get less so you can get more. But that doesn't really happen in reality. If people at McDonald's don't make $15 an hour, you're not going to make more money at all. And in fact, like you're saying, that puts less money in the economy and there's less people buying things. And we end up in kind of this place where we are now.